Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 8 of Make It Happen Leadership. We're here in sunny Cabo San Lucas. Excited to be here today. Got a little bit of a surprise for you today. Many of you have been following the podcast. Maybe remember my son, Bryan Kistner. Bryan, how are you?
Very good.
In the first, I think it was podcast 2 and 3, Bryan was the interviewer, and I was the interviewee. Today, we're going to reverse those roles. Bryan's going to be interviewed by me. Excited to be here, so let's jump in. Let's start, Bryan. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself first.
A little bit about myself. My name is Bryan Kistner. Obviously, I am your son, the best looking one of all of them. I'm a sales director at Garza Blanca, Los Cabos. Things are going very well in my life. Things are moving in the right direction. I'm about to be a dad. That's always exciting and pretty cool. So other than that, that's it about me.
And just so everybody knows, the fact he's about to be a dad means I'm about to be a grandfather again, so I'm excited as well. Let's jump in. You started a good point there. You said you're the sales director here in Cabo San Lucas. Talk to me about that a little bit. What are some of the challenges, leadership related? Let's try and stay relating to leadership. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you face here in a very competitive marketplace in Cabo San Lucas.
More than I would say as far as selling, I would say just challenges in leadership would be, the first one is myself managing expectations when things don't go exactly according to my plan. I think a lot of times there's certain things that you want to happen, they might not develop like that, and it's reminding yourself that God has a plan, and even if you don't understand it, you have to trust in it to sort of keep yourself focused, moving in the right direction, believing in that larger purpose of things, how they're going to develop. So when you're able to do that for yourself, then you're able to do that for the people under you, because they will go through that same experience as well, that things might not develop the way or in the plan or in the speed they think. So knowing how to manage it for yourself and how to stay trustworthy and continue to do the work helps with them. There's a quote of Winston Churchill that says, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage that continue to move forward that counts. Wow. Right. So that's the same idea, right? Just moving forward. And I would say the other one is, there's a quote I love about Richard Branson. I think we mentioned this the other time, but he mentions a lot that people ask him, what happens if you train people, teach them, and they leave? And he answers, well, what happens if you don't and they stay? And I think
absolutely
one of the other main challenges is, what happens with one of your team members is given an opportunity to grow. And even though you hate to see someone go, I think the hallmark of true leadership is being excited and inspired by that growth. I think that when you become in a part where seeing other people grow brings joy and excitement, that culture, that's really special leadership, when you can inspire others to grow and continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit on a very valid point there. It's interesting. The other side of that is, what happens when that person does grow? How does that impact your leadership with the team that's still there?
Yeah, I would say the positive side is nothing is more inspiring to see others achieving more, right? So for the people that are underneath this person that might have grown, well, now there's a new opportunity for them to grow as well. Obviously there, the idea then becomes, how do you manage the expectations of the people that believe that they deserve that opportunity versus who's actually going to get that opportunity? I think that's always a little bit of exciting. And I think the idea is just, it goes back to my leadership style, which is be a giver, and it's empathizing and supporting them. At the end of the day, when you have to sort of come down on somebody, or at least talk about some of the things that they're going through and issues, it's like, how do you make sure that you give them their expectations while still being supportive and not sort of bringing them down? So the idea becomes that, you allow someone to grow, you're excited, you're energetic, but all of a sudden there's a key component missing of your team. How do you fill that spot, and how do you empathize with everybody so that the person that gets it is excited, and the people that did not get it are excited for him as well? That abundance where everybody's cheering for the same goal is true success. When everybody wants to do more for their neighbor, instead of themselves, that creates real energy. I don't have to worry about myself, because if I'm worrying a lot for the other person and someone else is doing the same for me, we all have each other's back.
You just touched on something big. We need to go a little bit deeper on that. You used the word giving. Talk to me a little bit more about that. Where does that play into your leadership?
At the end of the day, I think in this business, we get so focused in striving to succeed and being the best and moving forward, and everything is about what am I getting in return for all those things. And it can very quickly get negative again when things don't fall into your plan, because then you get negative, you go the opposite way. So when you change that mindset and you're like, if I can give as much as possible without focusing on what I'm receiving, then others start to do the same, and what you get is always going to be bigger, right? I think that you see it all through the Bible that talks about doing more for others. I think that as a leader, that's the most important thing, humbling yourself and understanding that, Simon Sinek said this, leadership is not about showing you're in charge. It's about showing how much you care about the people that you're in charge of.
Boom.
Right? So I think that when you're a giver, it really demonstrates that you're not here to receive, you're here to give to them, right? To see and encourage how they do grow and who they become, not just professionally, but in life. I think that leading an example is we get so lost at making sure people are hitting numbers that we don't realize, are they also growing outside of life? Are they living their healthiest life, their best financial life, their best relationship life? So I think leadership is about that mentorship, that everything sort of feeds off each other.
So wait a minute, that's a big topic there. So if I'm hearing you, you're saying in your leadership, you believe a major responsibility is to engage with the people in their life plan, not just what are you doing here at work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people don't just work for money. Yes, the money, but we really work for what is the money going to give us, right? And I think we get lost in that idea where people think they're just thinking about the money and they forget to think about, well, why am I wanting the money? What is the money going to give me? If I got $1 million briefcase, but had to put it under my couch and was told I could never spend it, I wouldn't care about it. It just becomes like something extra, right? You want that money for what it's going to provide, right? So in order to truly encourage somebody and be able to truly lead them and mentor them, you have to find out what is it that they want. And that is outside of work. The number they're going to give you here is just because they're trying to hit a goal outside of work. Is some people are going to be different. There's a story my father once told me, that he said early in his career, there was this guy that he could see all this potential in, but just couldn't quite get him to get motivated. And he had tried everything. He offered him a TV and he offered him all these things. And then one day he gives him a ride and he realized, well, the guy doesn't even have a floor yet. He's still building his walls. And it's like, I'm offering this guy a TV. He doesn't have electricity. Obviously that was not the motivator. So as soon as I learned about him and I empathized with him, I changed my approach. And all of a sudden I said, hey, you do this, I'm going to give you this many blocks. You do this, I'm going to give you this much cement. You do this, I'm going to get you your flooring. And bam, the guy skyrocketed. The guy didn't change. It was our approach of understanding what he cared about and how he could get that through what he was going to do that changed, right? That's true leadership. You make someone become better for them, not for you.
So let me ask you this, your very key point there, we talk about that a little bit in the book, is hitting a vision, identifying the vision and building on their vision, getting them what they want. What do we do with the ones that don't have a vision?
Well, that's interesting. It's just like sales. Most people that walk through the sales floor, they don't understand they have a problem. And if you just tell people they have a problem, well, then they will tell you why they don't have a problem, right? It's you ask them questions so that they alone can identify what problems do they have, right? So it's the same thing with them. Someone might think, well, I already have a lot of things I want, right? But it's because they've never taken the time to understand what do they like and dislike about the way that they're living. And once you start to ask them those questions, they alone will start to realize, I don't like this. I would love to change this. Actually, I would love to have more of this in my life. And they start to sort of develop what it is they really are looking for in that vision themselves. It's same in the company. Obviously you put a marker of what you want to reach, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to fall exactly on that. But the idea is you understand why you're doing it and you don't worry about the how. You just know that if you continue to do the work, the things will present themselves in a perfect way to make it happen. And with people, it's the same. You try and make sure they understand, You know, they don't need to know how they're going to get the nicer car. They just need to know, do they really want the nicer car? And the car is just something, because it's very easy to connect with materialistic, you know, but a lot of times people want better relationships with partners, with parents, with siblings, you know, with kids. And it's like, why do they want it? You know, like, what is it going to bring to their life? And once they identify that, then it becomes easy to say, that's why I want it. The how doesn't matter. If I work towards it every day, the how will present itself as I do the work.
That's you know, let's go back for a moment, because that's a great vision, a great outlook. Let's tie that back. Let's talk a little bit about you and your career. You know, you go back. You didn't start as a director of sales. Why don't you talk a little bit about your journey here and the things that you learned that have helped you today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that obviously there's a confusion a lot of times because we connect being the boss with being the leader. And I think that's a misconception. You know, you can lead from very different positions, you know, and sometimes you can even lead those above you if you're empathetic enough. You know, it's not about trying to tell them how to do things. It's about truly improving the whole. And I have had the benefit, you know, of working in all the major locations of the industry in Mexico, you know, Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, here. You know, and again, what changes isn't necessarily the location and the clientele. What changes is the interaction and how you have it, and understanding that empathetic and supportive vision. You know, but at the end of the day, I would say that what my growth really taught me is sometimes you need tough love. You know, when you're empathetic, you can get lost in being kind, and people can confuse you a little bit for weakness. So sometimes you do have to make sure you give that tough love, where you understand that there's certain accountabilities that go with. That doesn't mean you won't be there to support them in reaching those accountabilities. Like, we are both accountable for each other, right? When I come to you, it's me being accountable of what can I be doing better to help you be accountable for what you need to do. Because only together are we going to get through it, you know? So I'd say that was my biggest growth as I moved up. And as I continue to have to learn it, right, is that idea that sometimes tough love is needed. Sometimes as a leader, you need to tell them what they don't want to hear, or where other people are not willing to tell them to hear. You know, especially top producers and people that are very talented, you know, you're so afraid to lose them, right, that you forget that in order to keep them, like in a sale, right, in order to be able to keep them, is you do have to be willing to lose them. They have to be willing to hear, or you have to be willing to say the things they need to hear. And they can make their own decision. And if they go, they were meant to go because that's what's going to help them grow. And if they know, they will understand, hey, I'm here with you. It's not just you. It's together we're going to figure this out. And I think that's been sort of like the biggest thing of my career, is helping people understand we're all good, we're all bad. We all have great things, we all have bad things. It's how do we enhance our strengths and make sure our weaknesses don't run other people over.
Very, very interesting. When you talk about accountability, Bryan, it brings up the theme of measurement. You know, I talk about measurement a lot in the book. Talk to me about measurement. How do you visualize measurement? How do you set standards and measure to create that accountability?
I would say the toxic way is I like to win, right? Typically I measure, am I winning? But that's probably not the best way. You know, the idea is, are you getting better every single day, even if it's in the slightest, most minute way, right? I think there is no such thing as perfection, but there is the opportunity to make something permanent. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you're measuring, am I taking the same actions that made me successful originally? And then on those actions, where is the door to slightly improve, right? And I sort of connect it with the idea that, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but having a daughter, you know, it's like you've already done something that's successful, but you don't know there's a better way. So how do you allow this person to grow and be incredible without allowing your own fears of them committing a mistake to stop innovation? And that's a lot in the industry, right? You know, I think a lot of times in the industry, we're doing so good, and this new thing happens, and we don't want to affect what's already going good, so we're not going to allow this thing to fail, so we do exactly what we've been doing from an outside source. Well, innovation happens from failure. You got to let people fail. You got to make the wrong mistakes to figure out that they were the wrong mistakes so that you make good ones. You know, I heard a saying that, you know, they asked this very successful person, so how did you become so successful? And he says, great habits. Awesome. So how did you learn great habits? I made bad habits. Well, how did you make bad habits? I made mistakes, right? So you only acquire the good by living sometimes through the bad. But yes, it's like, how do I guide them so that their bad isn't like fall off the cliff bad, but they are still allowed to innovate and make mistakes, and measurement's a great one. I think that, I look towards the future right now with AI, and technology, and I say, like, what a great thing to measure quicker. We have all these systems in place for humans that have to input, and computers are just so much faster of telling you every little detail, where the measurement becomes so unique that even if you could change the smallest thing, there could be this huge improvement, and the way I see AI is like, imagine if we can get to the place where I could practice in a game on scenario. Practicing in this job is so hard because a salesperson is going to answer like a salesperson. They're not going to answer like a client. So it's so hard to create that interaction of me truly practicing of what it would like being with a client. Imagine if AI could create that interaction. And then on top of that, by the end, give me constructive feedback of what I could have done better. What were things that I said that I turned them off? How much faster I would be able to improve if I could practice on a live on scenario, and at the end of the day, yes, technology is here to enhance and make things more efficient. We're in a beautiful business where the personal touch will never disappear.
Correct.
We humanize it. And as the world becomes autonomous, people will look for this more, because this will be where they will maintain that personal touch, right? That enhancement of connection, right? And, people won't remember, what you said. They won't remember the things around them, but they're going to remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is the essence of things,
Sales 101.
Yes, 101,
feel?
you can't forget that connection feeling, that connection, So at the end of the day, as a lot of things evolve around us that help us measure things better, we can never forget that sales has always been the same since before times. It's just, how do I make people feel? How I make them feel makes me feel whether I trust them or not. And whether I trust them or not is the opportunity to listen to what they have to say. Take the leap of faith, as they would say. So.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question along those lines. You brought it up, so let me emphasize on it a little bit. You grew up in an environment, on my journey, watching me on my journey. How has my journey affected you or hindered you or helped you?
It's there's a long story and a short story. At the end of the day, I would say it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing side is you taught me you can lead with integrity, you can be genuine, you can truly care for people. You're someone that walks the walk, and that's absolutely incredible. It's something that I will always be proud, because it definitely teaches you, go do things, be responsible and go do things, So in that regard, I think it's developed a lot of the empathy I do have in the way I lead, and, the charisma, because it's things you teach without realizing that you're learning, right? I'd say the other side, unfortunately, is it does comes with its struggles, At the end of the day, it's like, favoritism is hard to ignore, and even though you're always fair, unfortunately, being fair sometimes shows, or at least made me feel, this is not a reality. Sometimes the way I felt is I needed to be twice as good or bring twice as much value to get similar rewards.
Oh, it's a reality.
Yeah, because, it always looms on you, whether there's that favoritism and things like that. But
I think it's a challenge. Anytime you have family working with you within the same organization, you're going to see that. And you're going to face this as you go on. And it doesn't have to be family. If someone's a very close friend of yours and they come in, there's always going to be a perception that someone, and let's talk about that, because I want to know how you manage that, because you have some of that now. You have people you care about within your organization that may be doing very well and someone else not doing so well, and there's always that indication of, because he's your buddy, you're taking care of him. So it happens the same thing with family. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think, I would say that if the person is capable of taking that beating, the resilience that they create from it makes it very difficult to not succeed, right? I've tried to learn this because sometimes I do similar things, because I want to show that there is no favoritism. Sometimes I come down too hard on the people I truly care about. The people I know are going to be there in the good and the bad, right? And that's disappointing, because the reality is you should be encouraging the people that are there for you in the good or bad, and you shouldn't be allowed that the people that sometimes aren't succeeding judge whether you're doing the right or wrong direction. But the positive side of that is if they're willing to trust you and take that beating, when they finally get there, they won't fumble the ball, right? And like we said, we want to allow them to make mistakes, but what a beautiful way that if we get them to the place where they won't ever have to make that mistake, because you put them through the trial and errors, and you read a lot of that, and almost every movie's about it, person goes through a really bad experience, ends up being the top experience at the end. Adversity does create success. So like I said, it's a blessing and a curse, because the blessing side is I love the attributes that I have. I love how I connect with people. I love how I could call anyone anywhere and they would in a heartbeat want to be here, right? To have my back. And even if sometimes I pulled them through really hard stuff because I didn't want people to think I favored them, I also turn them into incredible leaders of their own, because now they have that tough skin. And life can be brutal, right? It could also be magical, but it could be brutal, right? So it's just great to be able to withstand that, because on the other side, the light at the end of the tunnel is wonderful. Life can be hard today and easy later, or easy today and hard later, and you get to choose. At least now I have the energy, the charisma to keep going. In the future, I might not. Why would I want it to be hard later when it can be hard now that I can take it so that it's easier later?
So before we wrap up, you hit on it briefly. You're getting ready to have a daughter. As a parent, how do you see some of the things you've learned as a leader helping you as a young parent, first-time parent, and also where could they possibly be limitations for you?
Yeah, I can't say enough how excited I am to have a daughter. I think that you try to think what it's going to be like, but you don't know till you know how excited you're going to be. Sorry. She's just going to be perfect in every sense of the word, right? What can I say? Just they come in perfect. Babies are lead by love and are curious to a fault. What a beautiful way to lead. If we could just all be leading with our heart and just be curious to a fault, just be beautiful, and I want to be that. I want to make sure that I'm there to learn as much from her as she will learn from me. I want to make sure that I'm there to mentor her, but not allow my fears to avoid her making mistakes. I want to be there so that she can ask open questions and make mistakes, but in a way that I can be there to help avoid the pain or the fall. Everybody should make mistakes, but be there without being so overprotective where all of a sudden they become unhappy of themselves. And that's the same thing in leadership. In leadership, if you do everything for somebody, they're just never happy, even though they're succeeding. So at the end of the day, I am so excited to be able to be back and forth with that person, because Nelson Mandela said, it's not what you did with your life, but it's how you impacted the life of others that you cared about that really makes a life worth living, and obviously I paraphrase, but that's how I see it with my daughter. I just see it that she is going to be here to teach me as much of living as I'm going to teach her. I think that she's going to teach me how to truly live with your heart without fear, because I think fear, is a mind killer. It overwhelms you, it eats you alive, so to be a baby and to live with all the possibilities, and how can I be for them empathetic, supportive, but without doing things for them, so that she can do things on her own, and she can do, and I just look so forward to that connection of growing alongside, and both of us growing, pushing each other to become better people. I am just truly so excited. I think it's going to really impact my leadership style. I think it's going to help me empathize more, that sometimes the people you love are going to drive you nuts.
Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Really.
So
you hit on something. It's really great. One of the lessons I've learned as a parent is, and you sort of paraphrased it there. is you can tell them something 1,000 times, but until they actually do something themselves, do they learn?
Yeah, and it's exactly that, you know, and that's, I think, where you learn the most about discipline. You know, your emotions are hard, you know, but when doing this industry, you know, you go out there, and if you're just based on your emotions, I mean, you don't feel amazing all the time, you know, and as you get older, I mean, people say this, but you don't realize it again until you lived it. All of a sudden, you have a back pain just because you slept wrong, right? So you get here, and it's like you're thinking of that. You can't convey the opportunity of how you can change people's lives. And that's what I love about the job. I truly believe I am impacting people in a positive way. I think that at the end of the day, how do I deliver the best version of myself regardless of how I feel? And I think that's going to be the same, you know, with parents and with kids. You know, it's like, how do I make sure I continue to keep myself disciplined to do what's best for us, regardless of how I feel, right? Because
You're absolutely right. The only difference you're going to run into is the unconditional love you have for your child. You know, this was great. We covered a lot of ground. I think you could not have hit the basics of leadership and the deliverance to other people watching here about leadership. I want to thank you for taking the time to come in and share your thoughts with us, Bryan. I want to thank everybody for watching. Look forward to seeing you. Make It Happen Leadership, Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.
Awesome.